Savannah, 1847. The air hung heavy, thick with the scent of magnolia and iron. The Carrington estate stood like a pale sentinel at the edge of the river, its windows dark, its halls whispering secrets that had no place in daylight. No one dared speak of what happened behind those white columns, yet everyone knew. In the east wing, where candlelight flickered against polished floors, a young man moved silently. Nathaniel Carrington, son of the powerful merchant, heart-pounding, eyes darting to the shadows. He wasn't alone. There, by the open window, a girl, not free but bound by chains of law and society, waited. Her name was Lila. Her skin glowed in the lamplight, dark as mahogany, her gaze steady, unflinching. They shouldn't be together. Everyone said it was impossible. Yet something dangerous, something forbidden, drew them closer with every stolen glance. Their hands almost touched, and the room seemed to shiver with a secret too heavy to name. But it wasn't just the law or their families that threatened them. There were watchers, eyes that lingered in the shadows, silent footsteps that crept closer, echoing through the corridors. A servant who knew too much, a father who would kill to maintain his power, and in the silence a single trembling whisper, "If they find out, no one will survive tonight." Somewhere in that mansion, a photograph was taken, a single image that captured the forbidden love, the touch, the stolen glance, the danger lurking behind every shadow. A photograph that would haunt the Carrington estate for decades, whispering its secret long after the lovers were gone. Because the truth of 1847 is not just scandalous, it is deadly, a city of wealth, grandeur, and shadows. The Carrington estate loomed at the river's edge, white columns gleaming in the sun, sprawling gardens concealing more than flowers and fountains. To outsiders, it was the perfect home of a prosperous merchant family. But inside those walls, secrets festered like rot beneath polished floors. Nathaniel Carrington, 21, heir to the Carrington fortune, walked the halls with a restless energy. His father, Richard Carrington, a man whose word was law, had built his empire on cotton, trade, and control. But Nathaniel's heart had turned towards something forbidden, something that could destroy him if discovered. Lila, born into servitude on the Carrington estate, she had known chains since her earliest memory. Quiet, observant, and strikingly intelligent, she moved through the house as if it were her own, though every glance from the family reminded her of her place. Nathaniel had noticed her months ago, at first with idle curiosity, then with a fascination he could not contain. Their stolen moments began innocently, a brush of hands in the kitchen, a shared look across the garden maze, a whispered word in the shadow of the library. But innocence could not survive in a world governed by laws and prejudice. Nathaniel knew that discovery would mean ruin, or worse. His father's wrath was notorious, swift and unrelenting, and yet neither fear nor reason could stop what was happening. Their hearts beat in defiance of the world, in defiance of blood and law. Even the servants noticed the tension in the halls, a charge in the air as if the house itself held its breath. Then came the night that would change everything. A wedding invitation? No, a photograph, taken secretly, under candlelight, capturing what no one dared acknowledge. The image froze the moment. Nathaniel and Lila together, faces flushed with danger and desire, eyes locked, hands almost touching, and shadows lurking behind them. It was more than a record of love. It was a record of transgression, a record that would haunt the Carrington family for decades. Some claimed the photograph glowed faintly when viewed in darkness. Others whispered that those in the image were never entirely at rest. And in that quiet, oppressive night, the estate seemed to shiver, as if warning anyone who might look too closely. That photograph would be the beginning of a story no one could ignore, a story where love collided with power, law, and death itself. The screen fades to black. Only the distant creak of a swinging gate and the faint rustle of leaves fill the silence. Then, a low, deliberate voice breaks through, calm yet heavy with unease. "You're watching Truth Uncaged," it says, "where history doesn't just tell, it watches." An old sepia photograph flickers into view, Candlelight dances across the edges of the image, highlighting the Carrington estate in the background. Nathaniel stands rigid, the weight of his heritage pressing down. Lila leans forward slightly, her gaze steady, almost defiant. And behind them, faint, almost imperceptible, a figure lingers. Shadows fold over themselves and the air seems thick with accusation. Most would see only a young couple. The narrator continues. But look closer. What do you see? The camera zooms. The folds of Lila's dress ripple unnaturally, though no wind moves the air. Nathaniel's eyes, though open, seem distant, as if aware of something beyond the lens. And the shadow behind them shifts. Not like a reflection, not like a trick of light, but like it's breathing. Historians dismissed it as coincidence. Skeptics called it a flaw in early photography. But those who've studied the image in the original archives swear it changes. The narrator whispers, voice dropping. Sometimes the shadow leans closer. Sometimes it watches harder. And those who stare too long never forget. A heartbeat begins, slow and hollow, merging with the soft static of a crackling film reel. Tell us, the voice murmurs, do you believe this is a forbidden love frozen in time? Or a warning from the past? Fingers of light trace the edges of the photograph. Tiny marks, scratches almost invisible, symbols perhaps, or initials hidden in plain sight. Some say it's Nathaniel's hand trembling with guilt. Others claim it's Lila's spirit marking her own survival. The screen shakes subtly. The shadow blurs. A whispered word, half heard, escapes. They should never have been together. And then, darkness. The voice lingers one last time. Before we step into their lives, into the estate where law, love, and death collided, ask yourself, if love can defy the law, can it escape history? Can it escape the eyes that watched it unfold? A faint click echoes. The screen fades to black. The story is about to begin. The city's streets glistened with damp cobblestones, lined with oaks whose twisted branches clawed at the sky. In the heart of the district, the Carrington estate loomed, white pillars and sprawling verandas masking the weight of centuries, a mansion built on wealth and secrets. Nathaniel Carrington, the merchant's only son, had grown up in that house, surrounded by the whispers of servants and the rigid expectations of Southern society. He knew the law, the customs, the expectations. He knew what he could and could not do. And yet, some rules he would soon discover could not bind the heart. Lila had been born into bondage on the estate, her life dictated by the whims of men she barely knew. Her hands, small but capable, had scrubbed floors, polished silver, and tended gardens that Nathaniel roamed freely. She had learned early how to be seen without being noticed. And yet Nathaniel noticed it started quietly. A glance across the courtyard, a shared silence while the wind carried the scent of jasmine. Small, forbidden moments in shadowed hallways. But what began as fascination grew into obsession. Dangerous, undeniable, impossible to name aloud. Neighbors whispered, of course. Southern society kept sharp ears and sharper tongues. Some said Nathaniel was sick for wanting what he must not. Others claimed Lila enchanted him with her gaze, her knowledge of the estate, her quiet defiance. But those whispers never reached the walls themselves, where Nathaniel and Lila's clandestine meetings grew bolder. And then came the first photograph. A daguerreotype, blurry and imperfect, the new technology of the era. Nathaniel had insisted to capture a moment that should never exist. The image shows them side by side, hands almost touching. The rest of the room is empty, yet shadows cluster unnaturally behind Lila. Those shadows would be the first of many warnings. Some say they were spirits of ancestors watching the transgression. Others claim they were nothing more than chemical anomalies. But every person who later saw the photograph swore they felt the house itself, watching, judging, waiting. In that estate, love had begun, yes, dangerous, forbidden, but real. Yet something darker lingered, a sense that history would not allow their union, that the estate's walls remembered too much, and that the daguerreotype had captured more than their faces. And as night fell over Savannah, the wind carried the faintest echo of laughter, and a warning. Some love stories are written in shadows but never in peace. It began subtly, almost imperceptibly. Shadows that lingered too long, footsteps echoing in empty corridors. A cold draft brushing Nathaniel's neck, even though the windows were sealed. The servants noticed first. Candles snuffed out mid-flame. A piano key pressed when no one touched it. The faint murmur of whispers drifting through the hallways at night, as though unseen guests had taken up residence. Most dismissed it as the natural creaks of an old house, until the photograph began to show its true weight. Nathaniel, driven by obsession and defiance, returned often to the estate's library to examine the daguerreotype. At first, nothing seemed unusual, but slowly, imperceptibly, Lila's eyes shifted. Not her expression, her very gaze. They seemed alive, aware of more than just the camera. And behind her, the shadows in the corners grew darker, almost solid. One night, the household awoke to a low, hollow moan. It rose from the walls, not the floors, as if the house itself were breathing. Lila claimed she heard voices calling her name in the garden. Nathaniel insisted it was the wind, but even he felt the chill crawling down his spine. Then the journal appeared. Hidden beneath a loose floorboard in the library, bound in cracked leather, yellowed with age. Inside, written in a looping hand that Nathaniel recognized instantly, were the words of his father. The estate remembers every sin. Some love is forbidden for a reason. Some shadows never forgive. The words made Nathaniel shiver. For weeks, the shadows in the photograph seemed to grow closer, creeping into the light of the daguerreotype itself. Servants began refusing to stay after dusk. Animals trembled or refused to enter certain rooms. And Lila, usually calm and composed, spoke of feeling unseen eyes watching her from every corner. The estate had awakened. Something that predated even Nathaniel's birth. Something that had observed generations of Carringtons and their secrets, and now it was aware of their love. By the time Nathaniel realized the depth of the danger, it was too late to turn back. The first disturbance had only just begun. Outside, the wind rattled the shutters, and somewhere deep within the mansion a shadow moved against the grain of candlelight, unseen, silent and patient. The disturbances could no longer be ignored. Nathaniel knew that something beyond love, beyond defiance, had taken hold of the estate. Whispers of his forbidden affair with Lila spread quietly, even as the townspeople dared not speak aloud. Some said the house was cursed. Others claimed the Carrington family had always harbored dark secrets, secrets that even death refused to bury. One evening, a visiting magistrate arrived under the pretense of inspecting the property's records. He claimed to be curious about the family history, but Nathaniel suspected otherwise. The magistrate's eyes lingered too long on Lila's photograph, the one taken shortly after their marriage in secret. When he peered closer, a flicker crossed his face. Something invisible had moved in the corner of the frame, and he never mentioned it. Letters surfaced. Ancient correspondence between Nathaniel's father and unknown figures hinted at punishment for love that transgressed the social order. One letter, torn and burned at the edges, warned, "Some unions summon what the estate cannot forgive. Watch for the eyes behind the veil. Watch and pray you do not answer." Curiosity and fear collided when Nathaniel attempted to map the estate room by room to trace the shadows' movements. Every floorboard, every shuttered window seemed to pulse with intent. Servants refused to assist him. Animals cowered or bolted. Lila herself began seeing things Nathaniel could not. Fleeting faces in the corners of mirrors. Reflections that mimicked her movements seconds too late. And the sensation of being touched by unseen hands. The photograph, that single captured moment of forbidden love, became their guide and their curse. Nathaniel discovered that the daguerreotype contained details invisible to the naked eye. A third figure standing behind them in every print. A man, a spirit. The evidence was impossible to classify, but I watched it, patiently, unrelentingly. The night deepened. Candlelight trembled in the drafts. The walls seemed to exhale. Nathaniel realized the estate itself was observing them, cataloging every touch, every glance, every heartbeat. And somewhere in the flickering shadows, the promise of punishment loomed. He had awakened something older than law, older than love, older than himself. And the estate, patient, unyielding, and eternal, was beginning its reckoning. The first clues were found. But the truth, the full, horrifying truth, had only just begun to reveal itself. Nathaniel's search for proof led him to the estate's forgotten attic, a place even servants feared. Dust thickened the air, cobwebs clung to rafters, and the wooden floorboards groaned under each careful step. Among old trunks and brittle papers, he found what no one was supposed to see. A chest bound in iron, locked for decades, creaked open with a rusty key left carelessly on a shelf. Inside were journals, letters, and photographs, some decades old, some that seemed impossibly recent. One photograph caught Nathaniel's breath. It was a daguerreotype of him and Lila, taken the night they had eloped. But behind them, faint yet unmistakable, was the ghostly outline of a man who looked exactly like his father, Samuel Carrington, though he had died years before Nathaniel was born. The journal pages revealed a chilling pattern. Nathaniel's father had meticulously documented every forbidden liaison, every whispered scandal, every act of defiance. Each entry carried a threat written in a tremulous hand. Those who love against the order will never find peace. They will be watched. They will be remembered. They will not leave this house alive. More disturbing were the letters from servants long gone. They described a presence in the rooms, a figure that only appeared when Nathaniel or Lila were alone. Sometimes in mirrors, sometimes at the end of hallways, always watching. One servant claimed to have heard the click of a camera, even when no photograph was being taken. Nathaniel examined the daguerreotypes under candlelight. The shadows shifted slightly when he looked away and returned. Faces appeared in the background that had no right to exist. Children who had never been born. Men whose names were erased from history. A woman whose eyes followed him wherever he moved. Then, the chilling discovery. A folded note tucked behind the latest photograph. The ink was smeared, but the message was clear. Time does not heal what is forbidden. Love cannot escape punishment. Watch for the eyes behind the veil. Watch, or you will join them. The evidence was undeniable. The estate itself had become a witness, a judge, and a recorder. Love had awakened something eternal, something that refused to let go. And in the corners of the photographs, in the reflections of mirrors, in the faint creak of floorboards, Nathaniel could feel it watching, waiting. The forbidden affair had begun. But now the past was moving toward him. As Nathaniel tried to piece together the journals and photographs, reality began to unravel. Pages went missing overnight. Letters he had carefully spread across the attic floor vanished when he returned from fetching water. Shadows moved where no candlelight reached. A chill crawled up his spine as if the house itself were breathing, alive and watchful. One evening, he found the old family ledger open on the desk. Names were crossed out, scratched through, and rewritten in a hand that was not his own. Lila's name appeared, followed by a line of ink that seemed to bleed into the page. She should have stayed hidden. The photographs offered no comfort. Each time he examined them, faces shifted. Figures that were once in the background drew closer, their eyes burning into him. One image showed Nathaniel himself. But something was off. His expression distorted, his eyes hollow, as though the photograph had captured not him, but a warning. Fear gripped the servants. They whispered that the house had a will of its own, that it punished those who dared uncover the forbidden. One night a servant went missing. Only a faint cry reached the kitchen, followed by silence. No one saw him again. Nathaniel found only his shoes neatly placed at the doorway, as if he had left on his own, but his footprints stopped in the middle of the floor. By dawn, the evidence he had gathered began disappearing one by one. Journals that had been opened the night before were gone, photographs shredded, letters reduced to ash, and then the final chilling realization. Every record he had found of the forbidden affair had been altered. Names changed, dates erased, history rewritten. The story was vanishing before his eyes. Lila, too, felt the weight of the unseen. Whispers followed her through the halls. She caught glimpses of figures in mirrors, figures who weren't there a moment before. Shadows seemed to stretch toward her, whispering threats she could not understand. The more Nathaniel tried to record the truth, the more it slipped away. It became clear the affair was not just forbidden in society's eyes. It had angered something older, something that refused to let their story live. And in the attic, beneath the flickering candlelight, Nathaniel realized the terrifying truth. Uncovering the past could awaken it, and once awakened, the past would never let go. Decades passed, and the story of Nathaniel and Lila became whispered legend, buried in musty archives and fading letters. Most dismissed it as the scandalous fantasy of a Southern family obsessed with secrecy, yet some records survived, fragmented, faded, and strangely resistant to destruction. The journals, hidden behind false panels and sealed chests, waited silently, holding their secrets like coals beneath ash. In 1924, a historian named Evelyn Thorne discovered a bundle of Nathaniel's letters in the attic of the old Whitmore estate. She was enthralled, tracing the faded ink with trembling fingers. But as she read, she noticed inconsistencies, names shifting, lines scratched out, rewritten in an unfamiliar hand. The more she tried to document, the more the words seemed to change. By the next morning, several letters had vanished entirely, leaving only the envelopes. Even photographs were not safe. When Evelyn examined the original wedding portrait of Lila and Nathaniel, she saw something no one else had before. A figure standing in the shadows behind them, its face obscured but unmistakably human. Each time the image was copied or handled, the figure seemed to inch closer to the couple, closer to the viewer. Those who tried to chronicle the affair found themselves haunted. Scholars reported shadows in their studies, objects misplaced or destroyed, whispers in empty rooms. One librarian described a chilling event. The ledger containing the estate's records literally disappeared from the locked archive, only to reappear years later with pages torn, notes rewritten, and a single line scrawled repeatedly in the margins. Some loves must remain buried. By the 21st century, digital archives brought the story into the light once again. Scans of Nathaniel's letters circulated online, and the infamous wedding portrait was uploaded for the first time. Within hours, viewers reported strange anomalies, shadows moving, faces shifting, eyes that were not there moments before. Some claimed that when they looked away and then back, the figure behind Nathaniel and Lila had drawn closer, more defined, watching. It became clear. Time had not erased the past. It had preserved it, waiting for someone curious enough to disturb it. And once disturbed, the past refused to remain silent. The Forbidden Affair of 1847 was not just a story. It was a force, and those who uncovered it learned a terrifying truth. Some histories were never meant to be revealed. As historians pieced together Nathaniel and Lila's story, one chilling fact became impossible to ignore. The affair had left an imprint far beyond the pages of history. The Whitmore estate, long abandoned, seemed alive with whispers of the past. Visitors reported hearing soft footsteps along the halls, voices murmuring names that had not been spoken in over a century. Some swore they glimpsed a young man in period dress pacing the veranda, while a woman's shadow lingered just inside the windows, vanishing the moment anyone approached. Archival photographs offered no solace. In the original wedding portrait, scholars noticed subtle distortions in the background. Shadows that moved when the light changed, faces that seemed to form and dissolve in the corners. It was as though the image itself remembered the forbidden love, holding the couple in a suspended moment between life and something else. Even modern investigations could not escape the influence of what had transpired. Letters that had been copied or digitized were reported missing, only to reappear with small alterations, lines erased, sentences twisted, initials replaced with ominous annotations. Never to be forgotten, never to be free. The more researchers tried to contain the story, the more it seemed to fight back, asserting its presence in both physical archives and digital spaces. The reflection of Lila in the wedding photograph grew particularly haunting. Under enhanced scanning techniques, experts swore they could see a trace of her eyes moving, following the viewer across the room. Nathaniel's gaze, once a closed, private thing, seemed to plead silently from the paper, a desperate, enduring warning about the consequences of love that defied society. law and life itself. And then came the final, unnerving revelation. One archivist, alone in the estate's study, reported seeing two figures, Nathaniel and Lila, reflected in a cracked mirror, standing as if frozen in the past. When he spun around, the room was empty. Yet the photograph remained on the desk, unaltered, watching him. History had not merely remembered their love. It had preserved it, enforced it, and demanded acknowledgement. Nathaniel and Lila's forbidden affair was not a story of the past. It was a haunting, a reminder that some passions leave marks too deep, too dark, to ever truly fade. The final realization was stark, undeniable. Certain truths, no matter how buried, will always find a way to be seen. And once seen, they never let go. Months after the last researchers left the Whitmore estate, a mysterious package arrived at the Truth Uncaged office. No sender, no return address. Inside was a small blackened wooden box, heavy and cold to the touch. Inside the box lay a single item, an envelope sealed with wax. Its insignia unrecognizable, a symbol neither found in historical records nor in any known Whitmore documents. Inside the envelope was a letter, handwritten in a flowing, almost ethereal script. They tried to bury us, but love cannot be chained. Watch carefully, listen closely. Remember. Beneath the letter was a small daguerreotype, the lost wedding photograph of Nathaniel and Lila. It had never appeared in any archives, catalogs, or public collections. The image was pristine, untouched by time, yet there was something impossibly wrong. Their faces appeared normal at first glance, yet the shadows in the background were dense, almost alive. And if you stared long enough, movement, subtle, sinister shifts, a hand appearing behind a curtain, the faint reflection of a woman in the glass where none should be. One researcher, compelled to examine the photo alone, later described the sensation as being watched from inside the image itself. When he turned away, he felt breath on his neck, whispers of forbidden vows curling in his ears. The daguerreotype seemed to pulse with life, a heartbeat frozen in silver and glass. Then the photograph vanished. Not stolen, not misplaced, simply gone. Investigators found the box intact, the letter still inside, but the photo had disappeared into thin air. Digital scans, enhanced images, and repeated searches yielded nothing. Yet those who had seen it, even for a few seconds, reported the same phenomenon. At night, in mirrors, reflections, or the corner of their vision, they glimpsed Nathaniel's pleading eyes and Lila's sorrowful smile. The final message was clear. Their love, forbidden in life, could not be confined by death, paper, or time. And the artifact, whatever force had preserved it, was not finished with the world yet. Truth Uncaged issued a warning. If you ever find the lost daguerreotype, do not stare too long. Do not touch, and whatever you do, do not blink, because as those who have seen it swear, the next time the photograph appears, Nathaniel and Lila will be looking directly at you, and this time, you will not be able to look away. Some love is forbidden, and some refuses to die. Nathaniel and Lila's story didn't end in 1847. It lingers, trapped in silver and glass, waiting for the curious, the daring, the ones who look too closely. If you ever stumble across their photograph, don't just look, watch, listen, and remember. Every reflection holds a secret. Every shadow carries a vow. And sometimes, the eyes staring back aren't asking for your attention. They're claiming it.